And welcome back to another episode of the Real Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jacob O'Connor. Real Conversations podcast for those dedicated to doing hard things and living a meaningful life. Today's episode is one that I'm super excited about. It is with the gentleman named Harley Schmidt. Harley has one of the most fascinating stories that I've ever shared, from starting a specialty vehicle company with two competitors that are over 100 years old, and then putting them out of business, selling the company, buying a ranch in western Kansas, selling the ranch, building a replica home in Wichita with an airplane hangar and his car collection inside of it, and building an incredibly successful marriage all at the same time. Harley's been married for 61 years, and his wife has been with him through trials and tribulations, including bankruptcy. And I think you can have all the success and money in the world, but if you have no one to share it with, was it really worth it? Harley's story is incredible, from dropping out of school at 14 years old to being self-taught and building all of these incredible things in his life. I really enjoyed this episode, and I think you guys will too. Let's get right into it. And welcome back to another episode of the Real Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jacob O'Connor. Real Conversations is a podcast for those dedicated to doing hard things and living a meaningful life. Today, I'm really excited. I've got a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine. His name is Harley Schmidt, and we're sitting here in his garage today. How you doing, Harley?
Doing wonderful.
I'm really excited about this episode, Harley, because your story, and I've done like 300, 400 podcasts. Your story is one of the most unique stories I've ever heard in my life. It's one of the coolest things.
Well, I tell you what, the good Lord's blessed me. I'll tell you that. And it's a lot of hard work helps too, you know. It's like I tell everybody, I said, you pray like God's going to do it all, and then you work like you're going to do it all. Together, you make a good team.
I like that.
Yeah.
And Harley, it's cool how we met. For context for you guys watching this episode, I opened a restaurant about 6-7 months ago now, and we have crazy busy weekends, a lot of people coming in and out. And I noticed a gentleman with his wife sitting at the bar, and he was doodling on a napkin, and I was just making small talk, introducing myself, and started asking you, are you an architect or something? Because you're drawing these little sketches on this napkin. And you told me you had no formal education, you weren't an architect, but you were able to just think about things differently and then build them in the real world. And it led to this really interesting conversation where you then invited John and I out to your house and showed us your car collection and told us your whole life story. And it was super cool that relationship came as a consequence of us just meeting at the restaurant. Like it really is special to be able to connect with people like that.
Oh, I tell you, it's been an interesting life. I'll tell you, life is good if you make it good. There's ups and downs in life, but if you'll always make lemonade out of lemons, you'll be better off. See, I was adopted when I was 3 days old, and I was adopted to the Schmidt family, and they were 48 years old. So basically, I growed up with old people. They were farmers, and Dad worked from daylight to dark, and it's just the way it was. And when I started to school, I don't know if I was born being dyslexic or what. I just didn't have time for school. So Dad, back in those days, you could sign a paper and you could stay home and work. So I did that. So basically, you might say I've been on my own ever since I was 14.
That's crazy.
It's interesting if I could share with you just a moment how life goes. You are 14 years old, and you can't get a driver's license till you're 16. So it takes 100 years to go from 14 to 16. And then immediately you're 80 years old before you know it. It's amazing how life goes. But the best thing is, like I said earlier, all these make lemonade out of lemons. And so growing up with those people on the farm with Mom and Dad, and they belonged to a very religious bunch of people. And of course, I rebelled to that. And Dad was a deacon in that church. And so every time the doors was open, we was in church. That's just the way it was. Well, I been kind of ornery. And everybody getting after my dad for adopting me because I'm not in the bloodline. In other words, I wasn't a Schmidt. I was adopted into the Schmidt. So that puts me one notch below, according to everybody else, except for the good Lord above. And so I'm sitting there in their little old church one day, just being as ornery as I can. I'm carving my name in the back of the pew. Well, that's kind of dumb. It's kind of like robbing a bank and leaving your cell phone on the door, you know. But here I am, and I'm sitting there, rebellious, and I look out the window, the little old window in the church, and the Lord speaks to me, and he says, I'm bigger than what they tell you I am. Well, I found that out many years later. He is much bigger than what we even think today. We can't comprehend how big he really is. So anyway, I left home. The first time I left home was 14. I came back for a while, and then basically I went on my own when I was 16 years old. And I run into Margaret, who I married. We've been married 61 years. Her name is Margaret Rose. She's the love of my life.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is, like, you can have all the success in the world, you can have all of the money in the world, but to have someone to share that with, to make it all worthwhile, to have someone that supported you. I mean, you've been married for 61 years, going on 62. What has that meant to you?
Well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be where I am today without her. There's no question about it. She never had a job. We've been very, very poor. But I'm going to tell you what kind of a woman she is. Many years ago, I didn't do things quite right, and I ended up having to, actually was forced into a bankruptcy deal where we lost her home, we lost everything. And coming down out of the courthouse steps, and this will tell you how good a woman she was, she elbowed me in my ribs and she said, go for it, honey, you can make it. And as a man of the house, when you don't have a home and you don't have anything left, I mean, that's a good woman. I mean, she could have just well walked away from me. She could have walked away from me many years ago when we first got married because I was a jerk. I was a young kid. I didn't know how to handle a wife. I didn't know anything, you know. And all the years in business, she would come to my office and we'd go have lunch together. And basically, she was my counselor. She would visit with me and she'd say, well, honey, how's things going? You know, she took the pressure off. And you talk about a beautiful, beautiful wife. Her name is Margaret Rose. Her nickname is Miss America because she's beautiful. And we have fun today just driving down the road or going and having a cup of coffee. And I'm telling you, that's a very good, successful marriage. Our grandkids love us. Our great-grandkids love us. Our kids put up with us. I'll say that. No, I'm joking. But we have a lot of fun together.
What advice would you give to someone who's young and looking to build that themselves, to have that type of relationship with a partner?
Well, I'll tell you what, God has a plan. If you're not married, he's already got a plan for a mate for you. Do not jump into bed with everything you see. Do not do dumb things until the Lord tells you who your mate is, and wait on her.
How do you keep the marriage going for that long, 60 years?
You give and take, because neither one of you are perfect. You got to forgive. One of the key things that we've learned in marriage is, and this really works and this really helps for everybody, is if I say something to Margaret today, just kind of an offensive thing, even sometimes when you don't mean it and it comes out wrong, we've made a pact where we can stop each other at that moment and say, that hurt me. Immediately we discuss it. We don't go to bed with it, growling and grumping and being upset with each other. We discuss it right then and we go on. And that makes a world of difference.
I like that. Do you think you could have done all of this without that level of support?
No. Even though I had God in my life, I would have never been where I am today without Margaret. There's no way. I couldn't have. She was just too much of a support. She didn't work. She'd stay home and pray. And business would start going down and we'd get slow and stuff. She'd stay home and pray. I mean, how much better deal can you get?
Hey guys, Jacob here. Real quick before we get back to the episode, I just want to take a quick second and say, if you guys are enjoying this episode, please make sure to share the link with a friend. You may have noticed I don't run any ads in the podcast. In fact, I don't make any money off the podcast. It's quite the contrary. Over the past 5 years, I've invested a lot of time, money, and effort into the growth of the show, trying to continually upgrade the equipment, bring on better guests, and just improve the overall quality of the podcast. So if you guys are enjoying this episode, or if you enjoyed previous episodes, please share the link with a friend. Sending it to 1 or 2 people makes a huge difference for me on the back end. As always, I appreciate your guys' support. Let's get back into the episode.
I've not been perfect. I've made many, many, many mistakes in life. But for some reason, the Lord had his hand on me. And he had me constantly remember what he told me back when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I'm bigger than what people say I am. And I found that out. When I was 32 years old, I got saved and I accepted Jesus into my heart. And the light came back on and I realized how big he was. He wasn't about religion. He was about caring for me and trying to help me. That's the most interesting thing in life, when you realize how he really cares about people. He has a plan for everybody if they will take the time to listen and understand what he has. And he's done many times like that for us. He's told us what to do and what not to do and where to go and where not to go. And so, not having any money, we were very poor. Margaret and I was very poor when we got married. So I'd done a number of things, but I started a welding shop just to make enough money to live.
And how old were you when you got married and started that welding shop?
Well, I was 18 and she was 17. We got married. So about 19.
Wow.
About 19. We actually tried farming for a little bit after we was married, but we could see right away that wasn't going to work very good. There was no money in it. So anyway, I started this welding shop, not knowing, had no plans of ever becoming successful or nothing. I just had to have something to give us a vehicle to make a living. And so I'd weld a bumper on a hitch on a bumper for somebody or whatever they needed welded. And one day a guy walked into my office and he said, "I need a trailer built." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll build you a trailer. That's no big deal." But he said, "It needs to haul plate glass." Well, I didn't know what it took to haul glass, but he asked me to come down to his place. So I came down to his place and he showed me what it takes to haul glass. So I built a trailer for him, and unbeknownst to me, I knew nothing about the glass business at all. But he happened to be the president of the Flat Glass Association of the Southwest region of the United States. Well, his friends were all the big guys. So anyway, that's where we got started. I called his friends, and so we started building trailers for them. Well, the interesting thing, the first guy he called was Mickey Benswanger Glass. And I offered to build a trailer and bring it down and let him see it. He said, he's laughing on the phone. He said, "Oh, I don't think you can afford to do that. I have 125 locations in the United States." But he said, "If you'll build one and build it and bring it to a certain place, I'll fly my guys in and look at it." And that's what he did. And that was amazing because they treated us amazing. And I did lots and lots of work for that company. But anyway, that's how we got into the glass business. And one of the interesting things was when I started in the glass business, I had 2 companies, 100-year-old companies. So here I am, the new kid on the block. Well, what happened was completely amazing. We went to a place where they had camp meetings and preaching and things like that. Many years ago, it was called PTL. And there was an old man there that preached. I didn't know him, didn't have a clue who he was. And I met him, and the Lord spoke to me, and he said, "If you will take care of him, I'll take care of you." That was a direct assignment from the Lord, and thank goodness I followed it. A lot of people will hear from the Lord, but they won't follow through with what he wants you to do. So anyway, he had put like 30 years in with one church company and another 30 years. Somehow it knocked him out of his retirement. So Margaret and I bought his home, He was about to lose it, and he was 82 years old when I met him, and we paid him on a monthly basis to 102, and he passed away at 104, and he was still preaching at 100 years old.
Wow.
And within 3 years, we became number one in the nation. It was like everything we did, of course, we tried to treat people the way we wanted to be treated. And so it didn't take nothing, and we become number one in the nation. And the interesting thing is some of the miracles that happen through all of this. It's just unreal. I don't know how many of them I will tell you today, but I'll tell you one of them that was so interesting. We had no business in the Eastern Coast, and we wanted to get business in the Eastern Coast. And so I was just praying. I said, God, send us some business from the Eastern Coast. Well, all at once one day we get a phone call, and we sold a trailer to a guy there. And one of the requests was, he said, I'll buy this trailer, but when you deliver it here, I want you to come so we can meet. I said, okay. So I went and met him, and the trailer was there, and we delivered the trailer. And he was busy, different things. And so I was outside of his plant, and I was talking to his number one man in the plant. And I said, how did you guys get a hold of us or something? I don't remember what the question was. I asked him. He said, you won't believe this. He said, I was standing here at the doorway, and I looked up at the overhead highway as it went by, the interstate, and he said, a trailer went by. And he said, something spoke to me, said, go run them down and get the name off of their trailer. And they build good equipment. It happened to be one of our trailers. So he took him over an hour to run them down on the freeway and get the number. And that is how we got started on the East Coast.
Wow.
And the other guy, the owner of the company just knew everybody. So once this happened, I mean, he called all his buddies, and so we started getting orders, And I had the privilege of building a special truck for the World Trade Centers before they went down years ago. And it was to haul a special piece of glass that couldn't hardly be hauled because it was so big. And so I've had some amazing privileges. I got to do PPG, Pittsburgh Plate Glass's whole fleet of trucks. There's 720 in their fleet. And I did their whole fleet of trucks. I designed a rack to haul windshields so they wouldn't have back injuries. That was a very, very big thing. And so one of the most amazing things that happened was with PPG was their corporate ruling was they had to have 3 suppliers for any one product, which makes sense in case 2 of them go under. Anyway, I was the only one that designed ergonomic rack. I didn't patent it. I just started building them, and they started buying them. And it was interesting. They made a corporate ruling to have only one supplier of trucks, which is absolutely unreal. And that's part of a God thing. I mean, God watched after me. He had to, because man sakes alive, I can't handle things on my own. Without him, I would have never amounted to nothing, And so it's been interesting. I sold the company in 96, and they hired me to run it for 97. And so I told them, I said, this is fine, but you need to hire a president for the company. So they did. And one of my deals in the contract was that I worked the trade shows across the United States. So Margaret and I would go to the trade shows and stuff. Well, one time we came back, and the new president had took my office. Well, that didn't go over very good with me, And so I asked him, I said, why you do that? Well, I needed it. And I thought, well, I only got 6 months to go on my contract. That's no big deal, And You know how you get over those things. But anyway, we go off for about 3 weeks on another trade show deal, come back, and he took the other office I had.
Oh, jeez.
And he put me in the break room with a card table. And I said, hey, man, what's going on around here? I said, so I stopped and I asked him, I said, would you like me to leave? He said, yeah, I would. Okay. So I called the big guys that bought me out, the investment group. I said, I think I probably ought to get out of here. It ain't working very good. He said, go ahead and go. We're going to pay you for the rest of the year, but do not turn your cell phone off. We're going to need it.
Yeah.
Anyway, a long story short, the company was in financial trouble, and I knew it. Anyway, so me being imperfect like I am, I got upset at the new president. And I got angry. Why would you take my office? Why would you take my second office? Come on. You know, life ain't perfect. I know we go through hard times, but come on. Why would you do that to me? I'm the guy that started the company. I'm the guy that built the company. I'm the guy that could help you get it out of the red if you'd let me. Anyway, I got bitter. I got so bitter, I'll tell you what, man, it was terrible. And one day I was praying, I said, God, I got to get over this thing. I just got to. It was killing me. And let me share something with you. Unforgiveness only disturbs you and destroys you. It does not bother the other person. So anyway, I was just praying and praying and praying. One day the Lord spoke to me. He said, go tell him that if you've ever offended him in any way, ask him to forgive you and shut up and don't say nothing. I said, well, God, why would I do that? Because I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, why would I have to ask him for forgiveness? I'm the guy that was perfect, you know. Come on, get in the real world, you know. So I did what the Lord told me. And I argued with the Lord for about 2 weeks, of course, as if God don't know what he's doing, you know. And the Lord finally told me, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, I didn't do anything wrong when I went to the cross either. And they crucified me. I said, okay, I'll go. Long story short, I went to the office one day unannounced, walked into his office, and he had a little round table in there, and he was on the phone, and I shut the door, and he said, what are you doing here? I said, come over and sit at the table. I want to talk to you. And so I did just exactly like the Lord said. I said, I want you to forgive me if I've offended you. And I shut up. You can always justify your offense if you try to. So I just shut up. I didn't say another word. He hung his head. Pretty soon he looked up and he was crying. Long story short, I hugged his neck. He told me how bad a shape the company was in. And I started praying. I prayed with him that day, and we started praying for the company. But what I didn't know was amazing. They still owed me $1 million, and they were making the payments. And I didn't even think anything of that. But he told me that day they were fixing to beat me out of that $1 million. And in the next board meeting, he could do something, and I don't remember what it was, so that they would not be able to beat me out of that $1 million. See, my forgiveness to him, the Lord knew the big picture. I didn't know nothing about losing $1 million. And that's a lot of money. And so by me doing what the Lord told me to do, they paid me that $1 million.
Wow.
And him and I ended up being friends for the rest of his whole life. He's passed away.
Wow.
And we started praying for the company, and the company started coming out, and I started giving them some ideas what to do and things like that. And still to this day, my old company, I sold it, like I said, in 96, is still number one in the nation today.
Wow.
And so the Lord had took me from a nothing and a nobody, and many people told me, because I was adopted, and religious people are cruel, I'd never amount to nothing. Well, the Lord had bigger plans for me than that. So he sold the company. And so anyway, I had a brother-in-law call me, and he said, there's some land out here in western Kansas for sale. And I told him, man, there's no way I wouldn't move out there. We first got married out there, and, man, we like to starve to death, and I didn't want nothing to do it, and I went off on him. I said, boy, I would never move out there, blah, 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 blah. Well, the good Lord had plans again that I didn't know about. That night, Margaret and I joined hands and praying over different things and sitting around the table, and the Lord spoke to me and said, buy that land, just like that. I said, buy that land. He said, yes, I want to bless you. So the next morning, because I've already listened to the Lord a few other times in my life, and he never fails, I said, okay. I bought 10 quarters of ground the next morning at 10 o'clock and never seen it because the Lord told me to go out there. The minute I get to western Kansas, different neighbors start selling me some ground. And so I put a package together out there. We did a number of camp meetings out there, a lot of church camps, a lot of youth camps. But I'll give you an example or two, a miracle or two of divine appointment ministries. We went to visit a church one Sunday. And this is going to show you how big God is and what we don't know. We went to this, and he was a missionary there. And he couldn't speak. I mean, he could speak, but it was boring as it'll get out. And the Lord spoke to me and told me to give him a large sum of money. Well, I'm sitting there in church, and I'm arguing with God again, as if he don't know again. I said, no way. The man can't speak. He's bored, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And I'm just sitting there. I didn't say anything to Margaret. First thing Margaret nudges me, she said, is the Lord telling you something? I said, well, what do you mean? Well, he's telling me to give him a large sum of money. I said, what'd you tell the Lord? She said, I told him he can't speak. He's boring. He went off like that. Long story short, we give him the money like the Lord told us to. But what I didn't know was he had 1,200 churches in South America. So it didn't matter whether he could speak or not. It didn't matter whether he was boring or not. He was doing amazing work for the Lord, and I did not know anything about that. So I just want to encourage you. He will speak to you, and he will tell you to turn left or to turn right or not to go this way or to go this way. And I want to share one more thing with you. The Lord showed me in the morning when the sun comes up, and you look at the sun, and you'll see the blue in the east and the red in the east. The red is for his blood that he died on Calvary for. The blue is for you to have peace through the day if you will just accept it and let him carry your burdens.
And one of the things that's like fascinating to me is your story doesn't make any sense. Like the fact that you've been able to accomplish all of this and to not have a formal education, to drop out of school, but then to have these designs in your head for how to manufacture these trucks and to haul glass, and then to have these feelings, these callings from the Lord, and to actually like listen and then have these outcomes that are tied to them. Like your story is not one where you would follow it in a chronological, logical manner. Like the things that happened are completely, they're hard to believe, honestly, but they're true. And it's just, it's the craziest story, Harley.
The interesting thing is I didn't go in details about some of this stuff. It's very interesting stories about some of the details of how certain things happen to fall in place. It'll actually blow your mind. It's amazing.
Well, one of the things that you kind of started on that I'd like to bring it back into is you bought this farm in western Kansas, and it's a 3,500 acre ranch, farm, whatever you'd like to call it. And I mean, you ended up putting this exact replica house that we're in right now, that's what's in western Kansas. And then you ended up selling that ranch for an absurd amount of money. Like that story in itself is one that I think you should share.
Well, I didn't want to go out to western Kansas, okay? Because like I said, when we first got married, we were out there farming and poor. I mean, we were so poor we couldn't even pay attention. You know, it was crazy. And I did not want to go out there, but, God knows better. And that was one of the most beautiful financial things I've ever done, because we put our money out there and it held our money together so we could sell it. And the amazing opportunities that we had out there was just unreal. I mean, the little cowboy churches, I call them cowboy churches, the little deals that we did and the cookouts and things like that. It was just a blessing for the whole community, you know. And then when we got ready to decide to sell that, to move back here back to eastern or central Kansas here to be around our kids, or at least around our daughter. Our son lives in Denver. Anyway, I told God, I said, now you took me to western Kansas. You took me out there, and I did it. It's a blessing. My heart's desire, and the Bible talks about he will give you the desire of your heart. I said, my heart's desire and Margaret's is to move back here. Now take me out of here. Well, amazing story. The gentlemen that bought us out, there's 4 gentlemen involved in a number of businesses in the country. Anyway, one of the 4 told his son that night, he said, we need to spend some money before the end of the year. He said, go find us a farm. Well, if I'm not mistaken, this boy was 8 years old. It wasn't 15, 20 minutes. He's hollering at his dad. He said, hey, Dad, you got to see this. The guy that droned our farm was amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful job he did. They took one look at that farm. They had a meeting the next morning, all 4 of them, and called me and said, can we fly in? I said, sure, come on down. And they flew in their own private jet, and they took what was real interesting. The house that we had was a beautiful home, a Ponderosa house. And he told us on the way from the airport to the farm, he said, we're very interested in the farm, I'll tell you that, but we don't want the house. I said, well, the house got to go with it. What are you going to do with the house out here in no man's land? And you sell all the land. Well, anyway, they wanted to have lunch. There's nowhere to have lunch out there in the middle of nowhere. So I called Margaret, and Margaret fried hamburgers for them. So while they're in the house getting ready to eat hamburgers, I said, well, I know you don't want it, but let me show you the house. So I showed them the house and talked to them about the house, and Margaret fixed hamburgers. And by the time lunch was over and we were going to go look at the farm ground, they wanted a house. And God just moves. I can't believe it. And these guys have ended up being friends of ours. And I'll tell you, it just, everything, like Jacob said, it should have never worked, but it worked beautiful, you know.
These things that happen, like, how do you make sense of them? How do you comprehend these things?
Well, I never expected to have anything more than just a living. That's all I wanted, was just to feed my family. We have 2 children. But God'd seen better, and he had a bigger plan for us. And I think it's so that we can further his kingdom and bless people and help people. I can tell you miracle after miracle for probably 2 hours if you had time. But I'll tell you one more that's really pretty cool. We went in a restaurant one day, and a gentleman come and waited on us. And I could tell that he was hurting. Something was wrong. So I said something to him. I said, you're down today. Is there something wrong? And he said, yeah. I said, you want to talk about it? He said, yep, I will. My 7-year-old daughter passed away, and I ain't got no money to bury her. Well, what do? The Lord's blessed us, so I buried his daughter for him. Wow. And that's the things that we're blessed to do. We're to bless other people. We're not getting millions of dollars in our bank account just to hoard it and to not. When I realize that God has brought me all the money that I have, then it's my duty to share it with other people, with hurting people, and help people.
I think that's really important, Harley. And that was something I was going to bring up is a lot of people view making money as like an evil thing, as a bad thing. But with your story, it's clear that you feel that you've been called to do this. And through those callings, the outcomes have been that you've made a lot of money. And with that money, you've used it to have a greater impact than someone who hasn't had that opportunity to help.
See, every person in life basically has an opportunity to bless 5 people in your life. So those 5 people are some people that nobody else can touch.
Why 5?
Like if you was a preacher in a church, you might preach to 200 to 500 people on a Sunday. But us people that don't have a church and we're out here on our own, there is people out here that we can touch that nobody else can touch. And that's kind of the key thing is everybody says that there's about 5 key people that a person can touch in a lifetime that makes a difference if we'll just listen and be a friend of them. And that's the main thing is be a friend, love on people.
I like that, Harley. I like that a lot. So I'm curious, like cars. Have you always been interested in cars? You showed John and I your car collection. The Rolls Royce is in the shop. You've got more in Florida. Like, where's this car love come from?
It actually comes from Margaret. Our son Dallas has a restoration shop in Denver, and he does some very, very high-end cars. And when he first got started, it took him years to get established like he is today. And Margaret said, I like old cars. Okay, fine. So we buy our first old car, and he fixes it up along with his getting started. And that's where the cars come from is, yes, I like cars, and I don't like to work on them. I want them to run. I don't want to mess with them. I just want to drive them.
What's your favorite car you have?
I don't know if I have a favorite one, but there's a number of them in here. It's fun.
Yeah, it's really cool because, like, for someone, when you were showing John and I, for example, like we were talking beforehand, why I like to do the podcast is because it widens people's perspective of what's possible in their own lives. It's like when you take someone like John and I and you bring us here and you show us that you've built an airplane hangar attached to your house and you've got a car collection, you show John and I the car and you tell us your story, it gets us excited. Like it makes us think, what could we do with our lives if Harley was able to accomplish that with his? And I think that that's cool that you have this and that you share this with people.
Well, it's like I said earlier, this is the key thing. The Holy Spirit is here now, and he is our comforter. He's our guide. He's our director. All we got to do is listen to him and pray, and I'll tell you what, he will speak to you. You'll have to learn how to hear him. Sometimes he'll speak out loud to you. Sometimes he'll just, all at once, you'll know for a fact that that's the right way to go.
A lot of people don't have peace of mind. Like things happen and they're like, why would that ever happen? Why would this ever be the case? But as you talk, it's clear that like you feel that you understand why they've happened. And how do you have that peace of mind?
Don't blame God when something bad happens. Some of this stuff is our own fault. A guy gets drunk and has a wreck. Now, whose fault's that? I mean, it's his own fault. We do such crazy things, just like that experience I told you about unforgiveness. Come on, that was my fault. Sure, he did what little things he did. That was no big deal in the big picture. But I got offended, and that's what the devil wanted. He was robbing my joy. I was mad. I was upset. I wasn't worth nothing to the Lord in any way. I really wasn't until I got forgiveness, And so you got to make him Lord of your life. You got to accept Jesus' death on the cross for salvation and then start living holy. Quit living like the devil and start living for him. And he'll start speaking to you. Just real simple, just like that.
I think this is cool because there's a lot of, like with entrepreneurship and business and people wanting to be successful and build something meaningful in their life, they're often looking for principles and tactics and like rules for how to live your life, right? Like wake up at this certain time, read these books. Like they're looking for ways that they can live their life that'll get them the outcome they're looking for. And what's cool is like you've taken religion, you've taken your relationship with God, and for a lot of people that's separate than having success in life. But what it seems to me is you've taken that relationship and you've seen the principles from the Bible and you've seen the principles from your relationship with God, and you've used them to structure your life in a way that almost allows you to move differently than other people will and get the desired success and outcomes you're looking for through your relationship with God.
That's right. And he will take control of your life if you'll let him. You got to accept him, and then he will take care of it. He will direct you, And so many people trying to find other ways to have joy and other ways to have peace. The best, most amazing thing for business is to have godly wisdom, and God will give it to you. Godly wisdom is how you be successful,
Harley, I've really enjoyed this. As we start to wrap up, like, you have an incredible story of building this life. What does life look like now? Like, you're in your later years, and like, how are you enjoying it? What's it look like?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Just to be honest, I'm a little bored. I feel like I ought to start another business or something, but I don't think so at the age I am. I think I'm just going to enjoy life and see who I can go bless. And Margaret and I travel a lot, and I'm enjoying life. I love it. I can't wait to meet new people, and it's just a blessing. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back. He spent 3 months in Florida with Margaret and didn't see you at the restaurant, didn't get to come over, and then he came back, and I've seen you 3 times in the last week, and it's been great.
It's good to have a wonderful restaurant in town to have breakfast, I'll tell you what.
I appreciate that, Harley. That's very kind of you. If you guys enjoyed this episode, you can find myself on Instagram at Jacob O'Connor. The podcast is at Real Period Conversations. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to share it with a friend. Harley, my last question for you. So I'm 23 years old, so I always ask this question to the guest. What advice, looking back on this incredible journey that you've been on, what advice would you offer to your 23-year-old self?
Okay, that's a hard question to answer, but I'll start like this. Like I said in the beginning, you pray like God's going to do it all, and you work like you're going to do it all. You treat people exactly like you'd like to be treated. That's a key thing. And you start praying that you will have favor with people, and God will give that to you. I have amazing favor with people. It's unreal. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you how it is. And I'll walk into a place, never met anybody or know anybody, and I'll have favor with them. And that's what God does. And I pray for favor with people, because people is who we deal with.
I love that. Harley, thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome. I loved it.